This is a posh update. This is a new one. I'm recording a video instead of writing. This is basically my update on a yard markdown progress that I have with building this gem. Um, as I can speak a little bit more in this screen recording, and I just wanna get a backstory on this. I first created an AirDoc markdown gem, which kind of solved the problem that I had back then. I needed to generate documentation for the rubies, and uh, Ruby's source code uses Erdoc as documentation. But when I needed to add Rails documentation to the posh 2i gem, uh, they don't work with Erdoc and they work with Yard. And I knew about the Yard before. It was just seemed like with Erdoc, within 1 weekend, I could get a working solution, and I did. And so I started building Yard Markdown to extend amount of gems that the tool can support. Also, Yard works with RDoc. So there is a lot of I can basically generate all documentation for all gems in Ruby ecosystem. But there were some things that I learned from RDoc that could be easily transferable to Yard Markdown. One of the things is just like tests don't really help with when you're writing a template. You can test for basic things, but right, you still have to generate documentation multiple times, review it manually. It seems like not a lot of work in the beginning, but it is a lot of work. And even for the simple artwork markdown, like I probably regenerated the entire thing like 300 times at least. And so what I created is like an example library. Where's the example? Example code, which I generate the report for. This is like a simple waterflow bird clocking classes with different types of syntax. It's mostly Erdoc specific here. And so I'm generating all the documentation here. So you can see how the markdown looks for those things. So my initial goal was to basically take the same example code and generate the same markdown with yard, which I'm doing here. You can see the same structure in a yard markdown gem. There's an example. There is an example code. I take yard doc, generate with this documentation for this, and I get this nice markdowns files here. And so I'm basically copying the entire structure that I have with Erdoc Markdown, but I don't think it's the right approach. Actually, Yard has a lot of interesting features. It can even offer like a type support, like this velocity. I could be like, it's not easy. It's quite easy with Yard to understand what kind of type is probably expected here and what kind of type this method will return as well. So there's a lot of cool features and we're more used to Yard type of template. So it makes a lot of sense to align the entire markdown as closely as possible to what Yard currently has as default, but just make it in a new format. So the thing is with Yard markdown is that a lot of people were speaking about creating such a gem, but it requires rebuilding the almost the entire templating system that you have. Like React gives you an ability to override a lot of elements in the template, but it provides only like a plain text and HTML format. You can easily override that, and which a lot of other gems do, but nobody really re-implements the template from the ground up. And I had to kind of, there's not a lot of manuals, but there's like official documentation on this. But I generally had to kind of do it myself. So like as you see, the lib folder is quite empty. But when you're doing templates, you basically go default full doc and markdown. This is very like stripped down version of the template. Like actually, real Yard template contains way more um, folders, modules. Like it's all broken down into smaller pieces. Like here, what I'm doing is quite really simple. I just write the entire templates in the serialize method. I write helper methods under that template, which I use, which original Yard does too. A lot of those helper methods are actually kind of a little bit like a copy paste from Yard. And here's the main method where everything kind of starts. And that's it. You know, like this is how I just generated multiple times. I try to get the template right, get something working at first, and then make like first I need to align it with my current AirDoc implementation. And then after I'm done with that, I can evolve it and make it better and maybe turn it into more recognizable Yard template, which is a little bit more markdown, break it up into smaller templates. Like there's like a small issues with generation right now where some of the comments are done are not really like here, those examples are not highlighted as a code, so it seems like it's just a standard AirDoc, but this comment should be formatted as a markdown, and then it would be like properly styled as in here. Like so there's still like a lot of small bugs here and there to solve, but at least I'm trying to get like some first working prototype working. Like the Yard is an amazing tool. Like comparing to what Airlog does, Yard is way more than just documentation generator in Ruby. Like it's actually, I was surprised to know that it should work with other languages as well. But it's mainly used by the Ruby only. You should review architecture for the Yard. Like there's like crazy stuff here that there's a self-writing source parser which generates the ST. It uses some legacy parsers as well, so it can kind of supports a lot of different formats. There are handlers that processes the CST, and it basically gets processed into those code objects and stored in the registry. And then this is where the output is generation. And basically, to kind of properly output the things, you do really need to understand really well what kind of code objects does this generate, how to access them effectively, and stuff like this. So like, this is a very useful diagram to watch. There's like very little information about the templates. It's mostly about how to overwrite existing template, which is useless in Markdown case. But there is some information how it works. But to be frank, like I was just playing with the code and it was way easier to figure it out like that. Like you do kind of need to look up code objects from time to time, which kind of variables, which kind of methods does this object exposes. But other than that, like there's a lot of cool information here. So make sure to read all this entire architecture thing is in Yard. There's a lot of work put into this, a lot of love. Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. Like you can do way more than just generating the documentation. Like it's very powerful tool that we have in Ruby. So that's it. That's basically the progress. It's just not as easy as I thought, right? Even comparing that I already wrote our doc markdown one time. The Yard itself is way more complicated than just a documentation generator. There's like a Reaper, a lot of cool stuff there, which you can do with the code and how to process it. So yeah, that's it. Um, we'll be trying to finish it, and then once I finish it, I will be generating the Rails documentation with it and try to see how it would look. There is also like a lot of ways to kind of copy existing documentation that the Rails has. So like if there is a guides in that repository, if there's a README, like I can just transfer it as a markdown um, to this generate yard markdown output. So like there is a lot of stuff to explore, like how to effectively generate this. But also like the one of the most very useful things that our doc markdown had was generating an index file, right? And this currently here, it's there's like index.db, which uses SQLite, but I think SQLite is like a complete overkill in here, like, and it's a huge, huge dependency that is being compiled and all that stuff, right? So in Yard Markdown, I think I will just output like entire index as a CSV file. It's like also the problem with SQLite files, it's hard to use as an index in case you have a lot of libraries. You have to kind of manage a lot of databases and reconnect to all of them or keep connections. I don't know. It's too hard. It's too complicated. CSV file is very easy. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming to Yard Markdown. We will hopefully have a Markdown generation, documentation generation gem soon in a Ruby ecosystem. I hope it will benefit not only me, but some other projects, you know. I already saw a lot of interest. Yeah. So this is it. Thank you very much.